With like a
All
tango
right, we are.
thing going. Anyway, okay,
We
we're ready.
we're live. Hi
Okay.
everybody, it's Catie Haris, owner and CEO of Nursepreneurs, and I'm here with Dr. Lev Gridman, Dr. Dan Cousins, and you're gonna have to introduce the other person. I'm
This
sorry,
is
I need
Neika.
to begin.
Neika, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Neika Haris, and I'm Executive Assistant here at Doctors for Providers. Happy to help in any way possible.
Awesome. So today we're talking about the corporate practice of medicine. Who wants to start with that?
I can start. Essentially, what we want to talk about, again, is corporate practice of medicine. What corporate practice of medicine is, it's a little bit of an archaic rule that a lot of states had adopted, some of them over 100 years ago, to make sure that physicians were not unduly influenced in how they would practice medicine. And essentially what the lawmakers wanted is to say that if there is money to be made in medicine, but it's done through the practice of medicine through a doctor, that the doctor really should have a say in what that business does. And so a lot of these states came up with laws saying that if you are going to be practicing medicine, it really should be done under the ownership of a physician, and that there has to be a creation of a company, such as a professional corporation, that has to be at least in part owned by a physician. And that way the physician can control how that practice conducts its business. That doesn't mean that the practice itself cannot align itself with a for-profit business, such as, let's say, an IV hydration company that a nurse owns. They could work together and they can establish the flow of finances under a management contract or another way. But it creates sort of a hurdle for, let's say, nurses who want to start an IV hydration practice in some of these corporate practice of medicine states. And so most states out of the 50 states do have something in writing relating to corporate practice of medicine. And the ones that don't are in the minority. I actually wanted to, there is a link that we can send later about which states fall under the corporate practice of medicine guidelines and which ones don't. I'm just quickly going to read the list of states, and you can look all of this up, that are actually liberal, in the sense that these states that I'm going to read to you do allow a non-physician to own a medical practice. And they include Alabama, Alaska, Delaware, Florida, which is probably the biggest one out of all of these.
We're writing a song, by the way, to encapsulate the lyrics of all the different ones so you can remember it like a song. No.
Yeah, exactly. No. So Florida, Hawaii, Idaho, Maine, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, New Hampshire, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Wyoming. These are the easy states. These are the states that do not have any laws on the books about corporate practice of medicine, and where a nurse can hire a medical director or lease a medical director for their business. In all other states, they have some provisions for nonprofit organizations, but outside of that, you need to set up a professional corporation. In Texas, it's called a professional association that would be owned by a physician. So what we're doing is we're helping nurses who are doing IV hydration, any nursepreneur who's an RN. And again, this doesn't apply often to nurse practitioners or PAs. This applies to RNs and anybody else who just wants to do business in the medical profession.
And also, I can just add that when we say you need to do something, we're not actually lawyers, and we're not telling you need to do something. We are, helpful people that say that we understand there is something that needs to be done, and you should technically go and talk
but what we are doing is we've had several clients come to us.
And Lev is frozen.
And Lev froze.
It's always on the funny face like this.
I know, right? Froze, Lev.
And they said, my attorney has told me or told my business that I need to have a physician owner or a PC owner. And we're seeing this frequently enough where we decided to say, okay, well, how do we decide who needs it and who doesn't need it? So we had to make our own company policy. And again, we're not attorneys, and we're happy to get anything in writing from your attorneys or anybody else that can prove us otherwise. But essentially what we're saying is, IV hydration, I think in most states would be considered, at least in part, practice of medicine. The reason for that is that there is a prescription that has to be written for the supplies. So the delegation is not in question. It doesn't mean that, of course, a nurse can administer an IV and can do the actual administration of the IV hydration and can see patients and talk to patients. But the issue becomes with the fact that these are prescription items. The mixes have to be written by a physician. And so because you have a physician writing the prescription, in some cases, the physicians have to evaluate the notes and sometimes even do either through asynchronous telemedicine or through live telemedicine, a patient has to be seen by either a physician or a nurse practitioner or a PA. That, at least in our opinion, is practice of medicine. And so in those states that have CPOM guidelines, we are asking those clients we're finding physicians for those clients who are willing to be PC owners. And again, that doesn't mean that those physicians are going to become majority owners in your own business. They're just going to be working alongside with you, owning these PCs. Billing, for example, can be done through that PC, but the flow of money can go in different directions. And so we have established the first year fee for finding a physician who is knowledgeable and interested in becoming a PC owner is $4,000 for the first year. For the second, third, fourth, and any consequent year, that fee is $2,000. The reason we're charging fees every year is because we put a guarantee that if something were not to work out with your current medical director, we're not going to charge you a second time to find you somebody else. So it's sort of a fallback that if something doesn't work out, we can find you a medical director in the future. Otherwise, we'd be billing you a lot more money upfront every single time. And really, the process is not super complicated. A lot of our physicians are actually contracting their own attorneys to help them with the setting up of these PCs. We're encouraging them to do that because it protects them, it protects the practice, because ultimately they're going to be the owners of these PCs. And that's about it. Now, in the states that I had mentioned that do not have these CPOM laws, we're going to continue to do the $750 a month model, where the physician does not have to become any sort of owner. They're simply your medical director, and we're going to leave it as is. So that's sort of the general description of what we're trying to accomplish.
And why are we doing this? To keep you all out of doo-doo. For lack of a better word.
That's kind of true.
We want everyone's initials to stay intact.
We want everybody to be compliant. We're not doing this first of all, we're definitely not doing this to make more money. We're actually, as a company, we make less money doing this. It's a lot more work for us. It's a little bit more complicated for our staff and everybody else. We don't have to do it from a business perspective. We're doing it really to protect the nurses and the business owners. We want all of you to stay compliant. And, because something, if you do something and it works for a few years, it may seem like you're doing okay. But if something were to go wrong and you were to be, God forbid, if you were investigated by the nursing board or by some other overseeing organization, there could be all kinds of issues that could come up, and you could lose your license, God forbid. There could be fines. So we're just trying to keep everybody protected and safe.
And I would just kind of echo that, because I've had nurses that have started businesses in Pennsylvania as an LLC, and then they were calling me and they're like, oh, somebody told me I had to be a PC or have a professional corporation, and they've been in business for years. And like, to your point, like if anything had happened, and I had this happen to one of our IV hydration nurses down in Mexico. She gave a medication, the patient had a reaction, and the first thing the patient said was, I'm going to sue you. And in Mexico, it's a little different, but in the United States, like all they have to do is call the state board. And, if you're not set up properly in the proper legal structure, you're going to be, they're going to think that everything else is not set up properly as well.
Yeah. And sometimes state boards or attorneys that work for state boards, they're incentivized to find things that are wrong. So I myself was once investigated by the state board for something. I didn't do anything wrong. It was a just giving you an example, it was a patient complaint, but they start asking a lot of questions that may be unrelated to the suit that may be going on or something else. And then sometimes the lawyers that work for these organizations are incentivized to find something wrong, especially when it comes to government organizations like Medicare. They may want to find financial wrongdoing so the government can make more money. So it's not always just to keep everybody safe. They may have other incentives to dig, but it can be quite scary when you are being asked all kinds of questions. And so what Catie was just saying about Pennsylvania and having a PC, again, I want to explain and reiterate that the PC is going to have to be, at least in part, depending on your state, owned by a physician. That doesn't mean you can't have an LLC. So if you have an LLC set up, that LLC, and again, I'm not speaking like an attorney, but speaking from my experience of what I've seen happen, is that you can work. Right, we're physicians, but I guess we've read a lot more legal documents than most.
We just play them on TV.
Yes, that too. So the LLC can work side by side with a PC, often as a management company, and that. So what I'm trying to say is that you don't necessarily have to get rid of your LLC. You still will very usually need one. You just need to establish care alongside a doctor who owns the professional corporation. And it usually doesn't take long to set a PC up. It's just like any business. In some states, it only takes a couple of days to set a PC up. Usually no longer than a few weeks.
Yeah, and thanks for that clarifying point, because that's really helpful. And also another point that you made when you were talking about the cost of this and not making much money. I just want to say that we were working with, before we found Doctors for Providers, with a different group, and they were just like, nope, we're not doing this. We're not working with nurses. It's too much trouble. It's too much headache. So, I mean, I'm so thankful that we found you guys and that you're willing to work with nurses in this way.
Yeah, we don't want to strand anybody. If we start working, we love working with our nurses. We never want to strand them. So we'd rather get a little bit creative and do a little bit of extra work on our end. And even if we have to hire extra staff, we'd rather do that than keep our clients stranded and unhappy and lose their source of revenue, especially in these difficult times.
Yeah. So practice providers
absolutely.
are the forefront of our patient care. We have to get everyone working in the same direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I wanted to mention that maybe hasn't been clear from everything that I've said so far is, in addition to the fee, so we're going to be charging you guys a fee to find you the correct medical director. You're going to be also paying the medical director / PC owner a separate fee per month. And that really depends on your state guidelines on how that's done. It's usually not a fee splitting model where they get a percentage of the practice or whatever it may be, but you are going to have to pay them a certain amount of money per month for being the medical director, for being the owner of the corporation, and managing all of that. So I just want to make you aware that there's going to be payments made to us once a year, and then there's going to be payments made to the physician, usually on a monthly basis, but they're not going to be exorbitant. So that's the whole point. And that's it. Hi, Tricia. How are you?
And just
hey, guys.
Hi.
We had to jump off, so I'm in place.
No problem at all.
There.
We didn't even notice.
I'm right here.
High five.
Hey, high five.
Oh.
Wrong way.
Kind of got it. Sorry, Lev. I was just wanting to say that we don't negotiate that between the provider and the physician.
Exactly, because our viewpoint is, that's a very good point, Neika, is our viewpoint is that the physician now becomes an owner of the corporation. We can't really negotiate what fees they get paid on their end, because if they're the owner, they should be the ones doing that negotiation. So that's just the way it's going to be, but that's definitely the best way of doing it. And again, our doctors are extremely understanding, especially when a company is just starting. Their patient and their fees are not at all high. But that's a very good point.
All right.
Questions or anything that people have?
There's actually a bunch of questions. So I'm just going to run through all of these just to make sure we got them all answered. All right. So let's see. Someone says, by the way, if you haven't granted StreamYard access, it only says Facebook user, but this is great. I've been in touch with the Board of Nursing in Nevada as I'm structuring my wellness business that features IV therapy. Next comment.
Can you offer that in casinos?
What can't you offer? I mean, they do massage.
If you can, sure.
Yeah. Someone says,
Blackjack
heads
table,
up to
just, hook up the IV to the blackjack table. That would be a great future line of
you
business.
just created a whole new business. I love
Yeah,
it.
somebody's going to run with that, Dan.
Oh
They
yeah,
can stay there
that's
for
happening.
longer,
Exactly.
They could go for long stretches of time.
Replenish themselves while they're spending their money. I love it. Let's see. Leanne wants to know, how does the corporate practice rules apply to nurse practitioners in Pennsylvania? Since we are a restricted practice state, I cannot own or employ the doctor.
In Pennsylvania, I don't remember off the top of my head. Most of what we're talking about is RN-owned businesses today. In Pennsylvania, as far as I know, when you're an NP or a PA, very often you can you could still collaborate with a physician. So it doesn't exclude. We'd have to double check what the laws are on PA, and I also know in some states nurse practitioners are completely independent. So they don't necessarily need a collaborating or supervising physician. So I'm pretty sure it's not going to be called a medical director if you're a nurse practitioner. It's going to be called a collaborating physician. And I'm not 100% sure if it's completely illegal to have a relationship with a doctor because they are doing work as your collaborator. Sometimes it's reviewing charts. Sometimes it's other things. But I'd have to double check on that. But I know for a fact that I'm fairly certain the doctor's not going to have to be a corporate owner necessarily, but we'd have to double check. Neika, do you know off the top of your head about PA?
For not not for PAs, but they shouldn't have to do ownership for PAs.
There shouldn't be ownership, but I know for a fact there should be. You're not, unless the doctor's referring patients to you, there's probably not an issue with them being a collaborator for you, but we can always double check and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, you guys can always drop questions below this video. And
we know a lot of stuff, but because there's so many states, it's just sometimes you just can't keep it all in my head.
Yes.
State of confusion.
Yeah, that's right.
Just send us an email. We'll get back to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what? And I'll drop your email link below this video too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next person says, heads up, Nevada Attorney General is actively pursuing IV therapy clinics. And then Jamie Schwartz says, so I'm in Wisconsin and we spoke to a healthcare attorney yesterday, Jackson LLP, and she said, nice plug in there, Jamie. She said, well-versed in the laws in Wisconsin. She never mentioned anything about CPOM, so this comes as a surprise.
Yeah, so I know in Wisconsin there are some, I've heard of Wisconsin as possibly having some exceptions. If you have something in writing, let us know. I'm just going to look quickly through my cheat sheet of the different states. And Wisconsin is not a green state, so they do have some exceptions. So they do have a CPOM doctrine. So that's the best that I can tell you, is that they do have rules on the book about CPOM. However, it is possible, we don't know how every single state functions. It is possible that they may have carved something out for IV hydration, saying, hey, IV hydration, for whatever reason, maybe in their interpretation is not considered part of practice of medicine. If you can give us something that says that IV hydration with prescription of fluids and mixes is not practice of medicine, let us know, and we'll get back to you. But as far as we know, Wisconsin does have CPOM guidelines at least for some things.
Okay.
Depends if you give the IV hydration together with some cheese.
Yes, especially if you wear it on your head.
Richard Cousins just a comedian at night.
After every state,
based on your where you're going to be at.
The comic relief of the event.
Right. Not everything has to be serious. And then underneath that, Jamie says, if an RN went in as a partnership with an NP in Wisconsin, does CPOM still stand?
Possibly not. Again, if an NP is an owner, again, NPs, for better or worse, NPs have more flexibility. They have more training and they have more advocacy. And so NPs in some states, NPs do not need collaborating doctors at all. And in states where they do, very often from what we know is the physician does not need to own a piece of the action, so to speak. So if an NP is the majority owner, then most likely there's a good chance that these rules do not apply to them.
Welcome back, Catie.
What's the security cam outside?
Let's see. The next person says, I can't see the name, but it says, can you touch a little bit more on how the MSO works? What exactly will the company control? I don't know if we talked about that yet.
So an MSO essentially refers to kind of like a management contract it's a contract between usually the LLC or the company that's, say if the nurse is the owner and is the one that administers the fluids, or the MSO would be the management contract between the LLC or the entity that's not owned by the doctor and the PC or the entity that is owned by the doctor. It just establishes a set of rules as to how they function. It basically says how things flow back and forth between the doctor-owned entity and the LLC. The LLC may be doing billing. The LLC may be doing providing certain other services as a management company. Essentially, the LLC has to justify what it does in order to collect payments from the PC. And so the MSO is going to say what the management company is doing, and it's also going to say what the PC is doing. It's essentially, usually it says the PC performs all the medical services and the LLC performs all the oversight services, or how it works alongside the PC. Those, we always recommend that these be drafted by your attorney. They're usually 3 to 5 page documents, but they should be drafted by your attorney who is licensed to practice in your state.
Awesome. Let's see. So DF, Doctors for Providers, will charge a one-time fee, like a finder's fee, right?
It's not a one-time fee. It's a $4,000 fee. Where it's just the promotion we're running right now is a $4,000 fee year one and a $2,000 fee for each consecutive year.
Okay. And
that is promotional right now.
That is promotional right now. It was more money, but we're working with our clients, and that's why it's less expensive than it was.
And just for clarification, so in states where CPOM exists, but there's still independent NP practice, can the NP be that person?
So can the NP be which person, just to clarify?
I'm sorry, can the NP set up a PC and do the corporate practice?
Sometimes, so it really depends on the state. I don't know off the top of my head. Sometimes NPs can set up professional corporations. Sometimes they can set up nursing corporations. I know for a fact that in California, I don't think nursing corporations can practice IV hydration. But in most states, there are such things as professional related corporations that are owned by NPs, and they do not need to have this type of model where the physician becomes an owner.
all right. Michelle says, what about those of us who are already in a contract with a physician? What is the impact to our existing Doctors for Providers contract if we need to create an MSA/MSO?
Okay, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to give everybody a little bit of a timeline as to when they can convert. We don't want to throw everybody on the street and say, hey, get this done tomorrow, and sorry, there's nothing we can do. So what we're trying to do is we're giving everybody up until the end of the spring to get their stuff together, to get their attorneys together with the doctors and get their documents together and convert to the MSO/MSA model. So you can continue practicing as is for now. We do encourage that you guys convert, as fast as you can, but we're not going to void your contracts to do this. So we want you to continue practicing. So that's why we're doing it over a several month period.
All right. Someone, I'm not sure who, says, I'm trying to set up my concierge nursing business in California to provide care for plastic surgery patients, but have been told by 2 healthcare attorneys that the board that I need to set up a home health agency. What is your experience with concierge nursing in California?
I don't know off the top of my head how a home care agency works. Is this person, do you know if this person is an NP or an RN?
Not
well, in the state of California, it wouldn't matter, but yeah, it's something new that we just heard about.
Yep.
Like, we've had a couple of the nurses say that the state board wants them to identify as a home health agency, which is weird because we don't actually, all we do is take patients home and their patients go home with family members, and instead with concierge nurses, the nurse picks them up and PACU and takes them home and just sits with them. So I'm not sure why that would come under home care, but That's what they are telling us. And again, none of us are lawyers. So
yeah, none of us are lawyers. Off the top of my head, I'm not aware of anybody asking to work with them as a home health agency yet at this point. And that's probably why I don't know a lot about it. But when we do, please let us know what the rules are. If it requires an oversight physician, such as a collaborating physician, a medical director, or a PC owner, I think it should work the same way. But I don't know how it works exactly with a home health agency.
And disclaimer, none of us are lawyers, so always contact a lawyer for any of this information.
Yes. I object.
Let's see. Can you repeat which states require a PC for RN-run businesses?
Okay, so it's most of them. We can send you guys either as a PDF or there's a website. If you were to Google Cpom states, I don't remember exactly what I have to put in, but there's a government website. I don't remember if it's through one of the states or if it's just a general federal website that lists all of the states that are corporate practice of medicine and which ones are not. So what I have because there's less states that don't need to be following these guidelines, and the ones that do not need to follow these guidelines, I'll read them again quickly, is Alabama, Alaska, Delaware, Florida, Hawaii, Idaho, Maine, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, New Hampshire, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, and Wyoming.
So it's such a random
yeah. And if you are not in one of these listed states, odds are you're going to need a PC.
Let's see. Does this apply to NPs if your state is an MSO? I feel like you answered that.
Yes, I think I answered that. Not necessarily.
Okay. I live in Texas and I want to set up an IV center. Can you go through a process as I came in late?
Well, I wouldn't know, I don't know if I'll be able to lead you through the entire process, but certainly as it comes to getting you set up with a physician who can, you're going to need a physician who's going to own the professional or association in that state, and everything else. I'm sure Catie and then the guys at Nursepreneurs can give you a lot of the other details that you need for setting your business up.
And this video is going to be staying in the feed here in the group, so you guys can always come back and replay everything. Let's see. Jamie asks, so would you recommend me talking to the attorney before pursuing with Tyler from your group? He informed me yesterday about Wisconsin being CMOP, asking if I wanted to pursue. You need something in writing from my attorney that states the exception, if you will. Do I have?
Yeah, absolutely. If you can find us, and again, we just need a couple of people to give us if we're missing something, and if there's an exception to the rule that relates to IV hydration, for example, please send that to us. I think it's a good idea to have an attorney on board, whether you're going to proceed with the MSO model or not. You're still going to have a contract with your physician, and really that contract should be drafted by and reviewed by an attorney. Excuse me. And so I think it never hurts to have an attorney picked out and vetted before you proceed. Before you start working with us. It's not absolutely necessary, but when it becomes complicated is when you always wish that you had an attorney present.
Jamie says, I meant CPOM.
We know what you meant.
Yeah. I'm just reading it verbatim.
Yeah, I have, I guess in the efficiency sense, this is my question. Can a PC in a certain state work with multiple nurses?
Yes, absolutely. A PC can employ multiple employees just as any other business can. And that's a good question. Potentially, yes. If you're talking about multiple nurses in different businesses, possible. The only confusion I can see arising is that if there's billing that gets done through the PC, which is the whole point of having a PC, is to having the money flow through the PC. If you have money flowing through there from different businesses, it can become confusing. So what I usually see is one PC working with one set business. But if you have a good set of billers or people who collect your money and they can very clearly segregate those collections and payments, it should not be impossible to work with different IV hydration businesses as one PC. So it's certainly possible, but there has to be more due diligence done.
Okay, so just a clarification on that. So if a nurse has an LLC but contracts with the PC, the billing would go through the LLC, right? Like they would, and then they would pay the PC.
Well, it really depends. It really depends what the attorney recommends. But if there is a medical service being done through the PC, some of the money may have to. Sometimes what happens is the reason you have a PC is that money flows initially through the PC. The patients would be charged through the PC. The money would be deposited into the PC bank account. And then the management company can take out money based on what their role is out of the PC into the LLC. That's usually how it's done. And that's the reason for having a completely separate company that can also have its own bank account and do its own billing.
And to that point, another reason why you'd want to work with Doctors for Providers, because I mean, ultimately you could have some PC that's like, well, I see all this money coming in and maybe I don't want to pay you as much. I don't know. And then with Doctors for Providers, you could get rid of that person.
There you go.
Always thinking of the worst case scenario.
Right, sure.
Right. Oh, let's see. So we have, California has a 10% of country's nurses and ironically non-nurse friendly regs and laws for setting up businesses.
Yep.
Let's see. And then Jamie says, again, there is a chiropractor in my area that has an RN ordering and administering IV hydration in the clinic without any oversight. How is this possible?
Anything is possible. Look, anything is possible. Anything's possible until you get in trouble.
Get caught.
So anything can be done on the street
I could do
corner
it
or in
too.
somebody's basement. People are performing plastic surgery without a license. Anything can be done, but it's all about how much risk you want to take and staying compliant.
And the last question, actually, I have two more. In New York State, how much does it cost to establish an MSO?
It really depends. An MSO is just like any contract. It all depends on what your physician. Oh, I keep saying physician when I mean lawyer. It all depends on what your attorney is going to charge you to set that up. It shouldn't be the prices. Really depends on what your attorney's hourly rate is or how they work it.
All right, I have Leanne is asking me how does the corporate practice rules apply to nurse practitioners in Pennsylvania since we are restricted to practice. Since we are a restricted practice state, I cannot own or employ the doctor.
Yeah, I think we already tried to answer this question. We'll look it up for you guys to see what the exception is in Pennsylvania. I don't remember off the top of my head with NPs.
Yeah, no, they're not. We have to be collaborating. And actually, we need two physicians, which is really annoying.
Sorry.
Yes, exactly. That's actually, yes, that brings up a memory out of that dredges up memories. That's right. Usually there's it's a collaborating physician. It should not be illegal. Again, I'm not an attorney, but I'm fairly certain we have several contracts in Pennsylvania where we have collaborating doctors. And again, you don't have to employ the doctor, but you could still pay for the doctor's services as a collaborator. And yes, in Pennsylvania, there's also a requirement for a backup physician in case the doctor goes on vacation or is ill or something like that. And so we have set that up before.
That is, yep, I remember now, the backup doctor.
Yep, the backup doctor. And we usually charge nominal fees for the backup doctor. So if you're in Pennsylvania, but thank you for that reminder, Catie.
And then Leanne says, I just don't understand the doctrine, corporate practice of medicine. From what I understand, we cannot practice medicine as an NP. I do practice medicine every day with having a collaborating physician.
You can't. So we're not talking about NPs. We're mostly talking about RNs. When you're an NP, in many states, you are allowed to practice medicine. You just need to have a collaborating physician as a backup, not necessarily as a backup, but somebody to you can ask questions to. Some states require a review of a certain number of charts. So we're not at all saying that if you're an NP, you can't practice medicine. You definitely can. And in some states, you don't even need to have a contract with a physician.
Yeah, I'm just going to, because I'm in Pennsylvania and I'm a nurse practitioner, I'm just going to say the bill is in the Senate, just support people that are supporting this because it's a colossal pain. It's a tax on nurse practitioner businesses. But, it is what it is. And, it's not really the forum here to debate, the issue, but hopefully we'll be an independent state sometime soon. But right now you have to have a collaborating physician. You cannot order any medications. You can't even get the vendors to send you medications without a physician's license. So you have to have that physician's license. And if you're paying the physician, that physician has to be in a PC and there has to be some sort of arrangement because you can't directly hire the physician into your LLC.
Does your company have non-negotiable points required in
MSOs?
MSO agreements?
So we usually do not deal with the actual drafting or the structure of the MSO. The MSO is going to be directly between you and the physician. And so we try not to get involved in the actual structure of the MSO contract.
In Missouri, can an NP be hired as a collaborator or medical director, or must it be an MD for a concierge nursing business with IV hydration services owned by an RN?
I believe it has to be a physician.
Missouri is one of the most restrictive states out there.
Yeah. As far as I know, Missouri also has a geographic requirement. You have to be within a certain mileage away from the practice, which makes it even more challenging, unfortunately.
Which is probably why they don't require CPOM, because the physician's got to be like practically on top of you in order to order anything.
Unfortunately, yeah.
All right, I think that's any more questions? You guys are awesome with the questions today.
Thank you.
These are good.
That was awesome with the
You
answer.
too. All right.
No, it's a hot topic. It's a complicated topic. You can't get good information on this. So I really, really appreciate this information.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. Our pleasure. We wanted to do this as soon as possible with you guys, so that we can take this on head on and not have any confusion.
Yeah, and I want to apologize for all the walking and disappearing. I had to go get my son. And
I'm feeling inadequate now. I need to go work out. I'm going to post the contact information for Doctors for Providers below. So if you have any other questions, you can go ahead and send them an email and they'll get that answered for you.
And we'll also post the link. I don't know if you have it, Tricia, but I can send it to you. But I'll upload it to Google Drive or something so people can download which states are which, in terms of CPOM.
Yep.
Definitely.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Always good to see both of you.
Thank you. Have a good day, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.